Hey everybody, it's GombletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today we're going to be playing another quick draft of the Brothers War. Without further ado, let's get into the draft, scooping up one of my favorite cards on Arena. I first experienced actually playing and running Fauna Shaman back in the Arena Cube, and I fell in love with her immediately. The Fauna Shaman allows you to spend 1 mana, discard a creature card, and search your library for any creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Just makes your draws so much more consistently good late in the game. You get to run a bunch of pretty narrow creatures in your deck, and then if you draw the Fauna Shaman, you can pull them out exactly when you need them. But even just building a regular deck without building around Fauna Shaman at all, the ability to turn a 2-drop that you draw on turn 10 into your 10-drop Rust Goliath or something is pretty nice. So Fauna Shaman, really flexible, really nice tutoring card, and that's what we're going to take here. If Fauna Shaman weren't in the pack, there are some really nice cards here. All of the 2-colored Signpost uncommons are very powerful in this format, and Yoshin Tactician is no different. Some very strong blue-white soldiers decks you can build. One of the premium commons for that archetype, and several others, is Scrapwork Cohort. Just gives you a lot of stats for the mana cost, gives you 2 bodies, gives you 2 artifacts entering the battlefield, and gives you that Unearth effect, allowing you to do it all over again once in the game. Outside of those 2, there's also Overwhelming Remorse here for very good removal, so those would be the top 3 in the pack outside of Fauna Shaman, but I haven't gotten to play a Fauna Shaman in quite some time, so we're just going to roll with that here. Pack 1, pick 2, we have some pretty sweet stuff yet again, but the best card in this pack for me is going to be the Static Net. It's a very nice removal spell, exiles any non-land permanent, gains some life, and gets a Powerstone. Just a really nice removal spell, and removal is pretty important in this format, so I'm happy to scoop it up. Not super into Mishra, but Sardian Cliff Stomper can be nice if you take it very early in the draft and push into as close to a mono-red deck as possible. This can be quite a powerful aggressive card. As for the commons, we see that Scrapwork Cohort again, which is phenomenal, and the Goblin Blast Runner is actually great in aggressive red strategies in this format. There are a lot of ways to trigger that ability to give it +2/+0 and Menace. There's even cards that you wouldn't really think of, like Bitter Reunion, that just can randomly sacrifice itself to help buff your Goblin Blast Runner. So again, top 3 outside of Static Net being Blast Runner, Scrapper Cohort, and Sardian Cliff Stomper, but we're going to go with the Static Net here. And now for pack 1, pick 3, we can push into a pretty aggressive green-white strategy by taking Recruitment Officer, which is a nuts card. It's a 1 mana 2/1, so already a very good aggressive stat line, and it gives you a mana sink ability, spending 4 mana to look at the top 4 cards of your library, revealing a creature with mana value 3 or less from among them and putting it into your hand. So this is a card that is a 1-drop aggressive creature that's a lot of power for only 1 mana, and the biggest issue with these kind of cards generally is that they're such bad draws late in the game once your opponent's already played some 3/3s and 4/4s, and this can't get in anymore. Well, this gives you a really good activated ability so that it's still a good draw late game, because if you draw it late game, all of a sudden you just use this ability once or twice per turn and start drawing some cards off of it. So Recruitment Officer is an incredible Magic card. We're going to roll with that here. Other notable cards in the pack being Airlift Chaplain for pretty much any aggressive white deck. There's a lot of good Unearth and Graveyard mechanics like that, so just the self-mill can be nice there. But there's also Disfigure here for very efficient removal, super cheap, and Scrapwork Rager for a great value play with Unearth as well. Very good pack there as well. Pack 1, pick 4 here is where things might go a little bit off the rails. I think the best card in this pack is likely the Penregan Strongbull. Again, as we saw with the Goblin Blast Runner, a lot of the red aggressive strategies are going to be focused around some amount of sacrifice, and Penregan Strongbull is the best, most consistent common for those sacrifice archetypes. There's also Takaji's Onulet though, and literally anything with Unearth in this format is pretty good. This is probably the weakest Unearth card, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's still pretty great. 5 mana for a 4/4, you can Unearth it once, and every time it leaves the battlefield you gain 2 life. I could just go with that Takaji's Onulet just to stick to green-white here, because honestly it's not dramatically worse than Strongbull in my opinion, just because of how great that Unearth mechanic is. But yeah, this is definitely the first pack that I would consider most of the cards to be pretty weak. I mean, there's Strongbull and Whirling Strike, which are fine red cards. Lawrence Escape there's okay in white, but I'm going to go Onulet here. Again, Strongbull definitely better, but we're sticking to white here with Onulet. Alright, pack 1, pick 5, and now we get the even better white common Unearth card, the Scrapwork Cohort, that I will happily take here. There's another Onulet, which would be fine. There's a Strongbow if I wanted to push towards red. And that's about it here. Thraxodemon's fine, Archaeologist is fine, bunch of fine stuff. But as for great stuff, there's Cohort and Strongbow, and Cohort is on color. Pack 1, pick 6. Ashnod's Harvester still in the pack here. Kind of wild for a black strategy. The crazy thing about that card is because it is colorless up front, you don't even need to be playing black as one of your main colors if you have a couple random ways to get a man of any color later. Yeah, I mean, it's the strongest card in the pack. I might just go with Ashnod's Harvester here. In worst case scenario, it is a 2-mana 3/1 that exiles cards from your opponent's graveyard to help shut off your opponent's Unearth cards. So even without its Unearth ability, it's fine, and with its Unearth ability, it's great. So I think I'll take that here. A filler combat trick in white, a very filler creature in white, not passing up on too much there, and there's literally nothing in green. So yeah, Ashnod's Harvester it is. And there's some other decent black cards, so maybe black's pretty open here. We push towards white-black instead, have to drop our Fauna Shaman. That'd be pretty sad, but we're just not seeing a ton of green. Alright, pack 1, pick 7. This is the first time we've actually seen a green card, Mask of the Jade Crafter. I don't think that this card's going to work super well with our current archetype. We are pretty focused on white right now, and white in this format is really good at being aggressive, not super great at much else. So our deck already looks super aggressive here with Recruitment Officer into Ashnod's Harvester, Scrapwork Cohort on turn 4. The Mask of the Jade Crafter is like a very slow kind of ramp card. That's where it really pops off. Can be quite powerful in that sort of strategy, but that's not really what we're doing. That being said, we're only passing up on a Disenchant pretty much, which is a fine removal spell, but not massively exciting like Static Net is. I guess I'll still go for Mask of the Jade Crafter, but I could see this. I could see this not getting played. It's not a huge reason to be pushing us in green, so we could still get pushed out of the color here and into black. It's just these black cards are also just okay. Nothing really exciting there. Alright, pack 1, pick 8. Now we've got a couple actually pretty good options between black and green. If we want to be a really slow rampy deck, Cradle Clearcutter is a nice card for that strategy. A 3-mana 1/3 that taps for green, or a 6-mana 3/6 that taps for triple green. But Thraxodemon's a really nice card for the black-white archetype. Black-white tends to be focused a little bit around tokens and a little bit around Unearth, and Thraxodemon works great with either of those mechanics. Sacrificing a Powerstone or a 1/1 soldier to draw a card is usually a pretty good deal, and definitely late in the game, being able to, on turn 5, Unearth the Harvester, attack in with it, and then also just sacrifice it since it's going to die anyway, is a really good deal. So I think Thraxodemon just fits better with our white cards than Cradle Clearcutter does, because again, our white cards are not very rampy stuff going on. We do have the Mask of the Jade Crafter that the Cradle Clearcutter would work well with, but Thraxodemonn just works better with what the archetype's trying to do and just our cards in general. And we get a pick 9 Scrapwork Cohort. Don't mind if I do. Actually, a moderately interesting pick here because there's a Scrapwork Cohort and Yoshin Tactician. So the Tactician is still in the pack, and we do have 1 Cohort and 1 Recruitment Officer for soldiers already. And obviously, if we take Tactician, we can push pretty firmly into blue-white soldiers. This is the strongest card. It is a stronger card, but not by an astronomical amount. I mean, the Cohort is very, very good. I'm just going to stick to the Cohort here, but I could definitely see a great argument for just taking Tactician there and trying to push into blue now. Great red cards here, Goblin Blast Runner and Bitter Reunion. Not much going on outside of that in this pack, so I guess we just take one of those speculatively towards red. I'll just take a Blast Runner, I suppose. Best card in this pack by a country mile is Scrapwork Rager, and we are pushing somewhere towards black right now with Thraxodemon and Ashnod's Harvester, so really nice to see a pick 11 Scrapwork Rager. Pick 12, Gixian Infiltrator could be okay. We have one way to sacrifice cards with Thraxodemon. Transmigrant Altar has always played far too slow for my tastes, and we don't need ramp like Tower Work, and we definitely don't need an 8-drop like Suchi Cave Guard. So Gixian Infiltrator, just by process of elimination there, is going to be the pick. Two pretty filler combat tricks here, Supply Drop and Lauren's Escape. I'll just go for the Lauren's Escape since it's a lot more efficient mana-wise. Strand Vigil and Meticulous Excavation are both really cool, really fun build-arounds, but neither of them are fast enough or efficient enough to really play all that well in this format, unfortunately. The idea behind Meticulous Excavation is that you can unearth a card and then bring it back to your hand with the excavation so that it doesn't get exiled, which is really cool. And then Thran Vigil here, the idea behind this is as you're unearthing a bunch of cards, you're getting some +1/+1 counters, but it doesn't really pay for its... It's not really worth its mana cost till you've unearthed like 3 times after playing this card, and it doesn't have any initial impact on the board, and just playing cards that don't immediately affect the board state in terms of being able to attack and block in this format is really not where you want to be. It's pretty aggressive. So here we are, pack 2, pick 1 now. What are the best cards in this pack? That's a difficult question because this is not a good pack. There's a Blanchwood Prowler in green. That's pretty premium. There's Gruesome Realization in black, which is fine because it is flexible. Mass Production can be fine if you have some synergies with it that care about, you know, the number of artifacts entering your battlefield that turn, or you have cards that give all your soldiers +1/+1 or something, but just like shoving it into here, it would just be okay. Self-Assembler's fine if you pick up another assembly worker. There are quite a few in the set, so it's not that hard to do so. Gigamel's fine, Warlord's Elite is fine. It's just a bunch of fine cards, really. Nothing exciting, not the kind of pack you generally want to open up. So let's go ahead and sort out our non-creature cards here so we can see what our creature curve looks like. It's looking pretty great right now. We don't have any 3 mana stuff yet, but Warlord's Elite is technically more of a 4 or 5 mana card because you do need to tap some stuff on the board alongside it. That being said, I do think it is quite a nice card. I've always been a fan of having 1 or 2 of these, especially recently. Another Thraxodemon would be pretty fine too, though. Maybe I could just try the Mass Production, but it just seems like a lot of mana. Pretty slow. 6 mana for 4 power and toughness. It is spread amongst 4 creatures, which is cool, but I'll just go with the Warlord's Elite. I really don't know here. None of these cards feel like something I want to pack 2, pick 1. Okay, pack 2, pick 2, on the other hand, gives me a great card. We are very low on removal right now, and Prison Sentence is an excellent white removal spell, being able to shut off a creature's ability to attack, block, and use its activated abilities. You get to scry 2 when you play this as well to set up your draws. Super nice card. Best card in the pack easily. The next best cards are Excavation Explosion for removal in red, Falaji Vanguard, a nice Signpost uncommon there. But obviously we're not in those colors, so Prison Sentence is pretty easy. Pack 2, pick 3. We do have an Emergency Welt here. That's probably my favorite card in the pack. Returning an artifact or creature from grave to hand for only 2 mana and getting an expendable little 1/1 soldier. Always a fan of Emergency Welt, happy to put 1 in here. Not much else going on in black or white. There's a Carrion Locust and a Lauren's Escape. Yep, I'm going to take Emergency Welt here. I think it's the second strongest card in this pack, even if you count every single color. The strongest being Evangel of Synthesis. So we're pretty happy to scoop that up. Pack 2, pick 4. What now? Another Tokasia's Onulet, a Recommission, which can be nice. Elsewhere Flask is fun if you get any of the cards that care about the basic land types you control. And Great Desert Prospector is only really good if you have a synergy with it, like the synergy of the Ocean Dissidents with the Great Desert Prospector. All of a sudden you make a bunch of Power Stones and put a bunch of counters on stuff. It's pretty cute, but it's not really good to just shove it in a deck like this because we don't really care about Power Stones at all. I think I'm just going to take another Onulet. The Recommission's like fine, but never been an incredibly massive fan of it. It is a card I will run when I have like some bombs at 3 mana or less, some very premium 3 mana or less creatures. But right now we just have okay stuff at 3 or less. Nothing super exciting. Another Goblin Blaster and that's kind of wild. Probably just going to take the Airlift Chaplain here. I have 6 Unearth cards, so just milling myself a little bit can be some decent value. And of course, this is a 3 mana 2/2 flyer at worst. Sometimes it's going to pick up a creature when I want one or a plains when I need one. So we'll go Airlift Chaplain here. Trench Stalker is also pretty sweet. It's a great synergy with our Scrapwork Rager, but that's the only card in our deck that would draw a card and help trigger it. I do want ideally like 5 ways to trigger this before I'm really happy with it, but at that point, I think this card is great. Alright, pick 6. Powerstone Engineer's actually kind of nice in this deck. We have a lot of Unearth stuff in the deck, and every Unearth card in this format is an artifact, so that means we have plenty of things to spend Powerstone mana on if we trade the Powerstone Engineer off early, and the other options on color are not very aggressive cards. A 1/4 lifelink, a 2/2 that grabs more lands out of our deck, and a little combat trick, I guess. Yep, I'm going to go Powerstone Engineer here. One of the better cards in the pack. Best card is, again, Strongbow, but we're not playing around with red mana. At least not today. Pack 2, pick 7. Relatively big fan of Battlefield Butcher. It's a little slow for our strategy here, but it gives you a way to keep damaging your opponent even if they stabilize on the board and get a bunch of good blockers. You can just keep tapping this to make your opponent lose 2 life, find the last, 4 to 6 damage off of that pretty easily. It's between that and a Disenchant. We currently only have 2 removal spells. Disenchant actually might be pretty exciting, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of Battlefield Butcher. I'll roll with it here. This is a little bit of an awkward deck for the Battlefield Butcher, but still think it's going to be pretty good. Aeronaut Cavalry is exceptional. This is one of those cards that jumped up a lot in my pick order between how good it looks and how good it is. It looks like your very basic 5 mana 3/4 flyer that's in every format. You're like, all right, whatever. But flyers happen to play pretty dang well in this format. And just a lot of creatures are randomly soldiers, so you almost always get to get the +1/+1 counter off of this, which does make it 4 power and 5 toughness worth of stats for 5 mana. You just spread that extra +1/+1 to something else. So like right now, we haven't even been specifically trying to draft a soldier deck, but we still have 5 soldiers as well as multiple cards that make 1/1 soldier tokens. The cohorts make those soldiers, the emergency weld makes a soldier. So Aeronaut Cavalry is going to be a great addition. The 2 next best cards in here are the red cards, Blast Runner and Swift Spear. So we could have been like a pretty sweet red-white aggro deck instead of black-white, but that's fine. I do enjoy Unearth a whole lot, so just being like black-white Unearth aggro is a deck I'm going to have a little more fun with most likely. So I'm going to sort out the non-creatures again and see how the curve's looking. Again, really nice here. Loving how this deck is looking. Another Thraxodemon would be fine. A Gigamole would be fine. A Self-Assembler would be okay if we pick up another Assembly Worker. Still really don't know how I feel about max production. It could be fine, but we've already got 3 good 5-drops that I just know are good. I think I'm just going to take like another Thraxodemon here. Pack 2, pick 10. There's the Assembly Worker if I picked up the Self-Assembler. But I'll just go for an Evolving Wilds here. Skullflayer is actually pretty decent too, but we only have 1 card that self-mills. If you have 3 or 4 of those creatures that mill 3 when they hit the board, it's not that hard to get the Skullflayer to start rolling. And that's obviously where it's great. If the ability never triggers, then the card's a really bad deal, a 3 mana 2/3. But if you can get it to trigger a couple times before you trade this thing off, it's a pretty great deal. And obviously, if the board state is stalled out and neither of you can really attack in, then it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the game until eventually it's too big. So it's a cool card, but I'm just going to go for the Evolving Wilds for mana fixing. Carrion Locust is fine. Some easy picks for the rest of the pack. Just take the only on-color cards. Might actually play that Trench Stalker if we pick up a few more ways to gain some life, and we might actually play the Aeronaut's Wings if we don't get that many flyers. I think that card is pretty great. We've actually used it in the Arena Open Day 2 draft. It's a really good effect. Day 2 draft 1. So that's gone up a lot in my rating since then. So pack 3, pick 1. This is going to be a really wild pick because there's a powerful rare here. Astronaut Flesh Mechanist. 1 mana for a 1/1 Death Touch. Every time Astronaut attacks, you can sack another creature to create a tapped Power Stone, and for 5 mana, You can exile a creature from your graveyard to create a 3/3 zombie. Really good card. It's going to give you a great way to use all of your creatures that have died throughout the game to just keep making more and more 3/3s and really overwhelm your opponent with more cards than they can play, obviously. However, the Signpost Uncommon in white-black is one of my favorite cards in this set. I think it's just completely busted. It gives me major Bortuk Bone Rattle vibes from Dominar United. It's a 5-mana 3/2 that returns any artifact or creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield when you play it, and it gives all your creatures mana value 3 or less +1/+0. This is such an impressive way to top out your curve in an aggro deck that I would pass almost nothing over this if I'm in white-black like I am. This thing is just going to bring back your best creature that's died throughout the game. It's going to make your whole board get +1/+0 to get a bunch more damage in, and it's going to leave behind an additional 3/2 body alongside all of that. So here are the dudes. Just easily the pick for me over even an Ashnod. Pack 3, pick 2. Let's scoop up another removal spell here. Prison Sentence it is. Gurgling Anointer's a lot of fun, but we don't have that much card draw in here, as we said before. Outside of that, there's a Skyfisher Spider to be a pretty good splash, but we only have one Evolving Wilds as a way to splash, so we're going to go for Prison Sentence instead. Pack 3, pick 3. We're doing really great on the creature count. We've looked at that a couple times, so we can pick up another efficient removal spell in Disfigure. Pick 4 now, another Aeronaut Cavalry to top off the curve with another flying threat. It seems very nice to me. There's also Warplow, which I do like a lot for the flexibility of it. And Skullflare, which is fine, but we'd like another top-end flyer here, I think. Probably going to end up cutting the Takaja's Onulets or something. Although, when you show me a Disciples of Gix, I do love top-ending my Unearth decks with the Disciples of Gix at 6 mana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Unearth cards? Sure, let's get a Disciples of Gix in here. Ambush Paratrooper is arguably better because it's just a great aggressive rate that gives you a good mana sink ability to keep buffing your board every turn as you're attacking in. But I really like Disciples of Gix. I think the card is really fun, and just being able to set up a huge Unearth attack the turn after you play this is so awesome, because you just do this and then you throw 3 Unearth cards in grave, and next turn you're like bam bam bam, send them all in. Just a super fun card. Very into it. And we can just pick up the Ambush Paratrooper now anyway. Alright, pack 3, pick 7. Lay Down Arms. How many planes are we going to be running in this deck is the question. If this is on average 3 mana value plus, that'll be pretty great. We are more white cards than black cards, and a decent amount of artifacts. We can probably run a whole lot of planes in here. So it's probably going to be a little better than Disenchant, so we'll take Lay Down Arms here. Now we'll take a Gruesome Realization, although I don't think I'll actually be running that in this deck. Now we can take a Disenchant. Riposte is very nice in best of 3. When you know that you're on the draw, this card's pretty great, because this is the format where most decks are pretty aggressive, so whoever's on the play is kind of the beatdown, and whoever's on the draw is the defensive. So even if you're an aggressive deck, if you're on the draw, having a Deadly Riposte is usually pretty nice. So that was another thing that I did during the Arena Open draft number 1, was siding in Deadly Ripostes every time that we were on the draw, guaranteed. And it played really well there. I don't love it just main deck though, because if you're an aggressive deck and you're on the play, not a whole ton of opportunities to use this well. Let's take a Disenchant. Soul Guide Lantern. Don't know if that'll make the cut. If I need more ways to draw 1 card to trigger the Trench Stalker, I can do that, but I'm probably going to cut the Trench Stalker instead. Now we're just rare drafting. And finishing up the draft. So we have a very, very nice deck here where we get to cut like 10 cards. Definitely have a lot of options in how we build this, because the bots have drafted, or have passed us, a lot of goodies today. Aeronaut's Wings and Soul Guide Lantern are both pretty viable options. Gruesome Realization sort of, but I'm almost 100% certain that I'll cut that. So 11 cards over right now. So we get to cut 11. We're at 22 creatures. Even a really aggressive deck, I tend to run about 17. So let's just cut 5 creatures right off the bat. Trench Stalker, we're going to cut out on some of that card draw synergy. Carrying Locust, I'm not in love with. Unit Infiltrator, where the only ways to trigger it are 2 Thraxidemons, seem pretty bad. Still need to cut 2 more. I don't really want to cut the Cavalries. Maybe I am cutting the Onulets here, but then that puts me to 1, 2, 3, 4 Unearth cards. Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable to me. If we do that, though, we're going to have to cut Disciples of Gix, because 4 Unearth cards is a little too low for Disciples to consistently be hitting 3, and it's not really good unless you're hitting the full 3. And if we cut all these, then we're just lowering the curve a lot and getting incredibly aggressive with it, which is a good place to be. Then we probably run the combat trick like Military Discipline here. Yep, let's just narrow in on a very aggressive deck here, I suppose. This drops us to 16 creatures, but I could put one of those cheap ones back in if I want, like a Carrion Locust. Relatively efficient flyer, and I don't have a lot of 3 mana value cards right now. Seems fine. Yeah, probably better than the rest as the 17th creature. So let's cut 6 more cards out of this deck. So 6 non-creature cards, and we're going to cut the least aggressive cards out of the deck. That would be Soul Guide Lantern. That's just about interacting with your opponent, spending a little bit of time, draw a card. Aeronaut's Wings just cost a good amount of mana to put on the board and then start moving it around to equip things. And we've got a good amount of flyers. We have 2 Ambush Paratrooper, Carrion Locust, Airlift Chaplain, and 2 Aeronaut Cavalry. It's definitely redundant on any of those. So cut those 2. We still need to cut 4 more cards. Really like Static Net, Prison Sentence. Those are our best removal spells by far because they can shut off blockers. Lay Down Arms might actually be a little awkward in here. The fact that it gains our opponent 3 life is actually a big deal. And the other thing about Lay Down Arms that makes it better as kind of a defensive removal spell than an offensive one is that it's almost never going to exile something worth as much mana as the turn that you're on. So if you have a bunch of 2 mana 2/2s on board, and then your opponent plays their 3 mana 3/3 passes to you, your Lay Down Arms is not going to exile a 3 mana card when you have 3 lands on board, because you're going to have at least one swamp out there. So you need 4 mana, right? You need 3 plains and a swamp to exile a 3-drop. So I don't know. It always exiles something lower than what you want it to at the time. And yeah, like I'd still run it generally, but I feel like we've got great removal already. We have Disfigure, Double Prison Sentence, Static Net. We can even leverage our Military Discipline relatively easily as a removal spell sort of combat trick, to where I'm probably going to run that over Lauren's Escape. I don't have a lot of incredibly important creatures. The only one I can think of is Hero of the Dunes, which if a Hero of the Dunes dies, it's still got something back from grave. It's still got that value. Whereas Military Discipline lets me leverage all of these unimportant cheap creatures as ways to clear out blockers very easily. If I attack in with a 2/1 Powerstone Engineer or a 2/2 Thraxidemon and my opponent blocks with their 2/2 or their 2/3, that would be where I'm really happy. I can just Military Discipline to clear that blocker out of the way and still have that power on board to hit them with later. So I'm going to keep Military Discipline over the Lauren's Escape in this aggressive strategy. And then Recommission versus Emergency Weld, both are just like graveyard recursion spells. I already have some Unearth on that front and a Hero of the Dunes, so I could just cut those here. Recommission does look like a lot of fun in this deck, though. The majority of our creatures are mana value 3 or less, so we could cut like a Disenchant. But I think Recommission is actually better than Emergency Weld in this deck, because the vast majority of the time, Recommission is going to bring back anything that we would want to bring back with Emergency Weld. Except that with Recommission, we bring it back with a +1/+1 counter instead of putting it in our hand and forcing us to recast it. So I think Recommission is better than Weld in this deck, but I don't know if they're better than Disenchant. Probably. I'm going to cut Disenchant for Recommission and call it a deck here. I'm very okay with running a 17 land deck here, even though this deck is aggressive, because we do curve all the way up to 5 mana, and then we have some extra ways to use our mana. we have enough Unearth effects that there will be a decent amount of the time that we want to cast a spell and activate an Unearth ability, and of course Unearth abilities are relatively expensive. We also have the mana sync ability from Recruitment Officer, as well as the mana sync abilities off of Ambush Paratroopers, Thraxademon. A lot of good ways to use mana in this deck. We're going to run the full 17, and this is going to be the deck. Alright, here we have the final deck list we'll be playing with today. This is going to be a black-white graveyard recursion aggro deck. Primarily, the deck is a pretty basic aggro deck. I mean, we've got 1 mana 2/1s, a bunch of 2 mana flyers, and 2 mana 2/2s and stuff to beat our opponent down with, all that good stuff. Just a lot of beat sticks. But as for interesting synergies in the deck, we do have multiple Unearth cards in here. We have a tiny bit of self-mill from Airlift Chaplain. And then we have Hero of the Dunes as another way to return non-Unearth cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. And then Aeronaut Cavalry as a big late-game flyer to beat our opponent for the last few points of damage. So ideally, we're just going to play like a regular aggro deck that just has a little bit more resilience than usual, because we're going to be beating our opponent down a bunch, and then once we run out of threats, run out of ways to get damage in, got a few ways to get some back. We unearth some stuff, maybe bring something back with a Hero of the Dunes or Recommission or something like that, find those last few points of damage that way. And of course, every good aggro deck has a good suite of combat tricks or removal spells to help clear the way and get your damage in, and this deck is no different. We have the very cheap Disfigure, the 2 prison sentences to shut off any creature, and a static net to exile any non-land permanent. And then for the combat trick, we've got 1 military discipline in here, so plenty of ways to break through opposing blockers and find our damage. So that's the deck we're going to be playing today. That is the general strategy. Without further ado, let's head into the gameplay. Alright, here we are in game 1. Our opponent is on the play. Alright, we've got a turn 2 Ashnod's Harvester here. I don't have any combat tricks to follow it up, but Ashnod's Harvester trading into almost any creature is okay because it does have that Unearth. And obviously, if our opponent can't get a creature out this turn, then it's going to be our best attacker. They do get a Burnished Heart down. I would expect a trade here unless my opponent really wants the mana. They do quite want that mana. Alright, let's drop a Thraxademon here. So opponent is probably going to go for the block plus sacrifice play this turn, so they can stop some damage and still get the lands that they are looking for. And there they go. Grab 2 forests. Uh-oh. They're going to ramp into some very big stuff. Well, luckily for me, I have a static net in hand to exile what gigantic creature they're about to cast. The main one I could think of would be Boulder Branch Golem. Such a good way to stabilize against aggressive strategies like this, and that is what they have. That card is a devastating card against aggro decks, so if they have multiples of it, we might just lose here, but we can clear this one out and just bash in. Maybe we're good. Opponent is down to 12 here, and we do have some flyers even if they get another Boulder Branch, but they'd be back at very close to 20. They'd be back up to 18 life after a second Boulder Branch Golem. Alright, our Gothian Opportunist and Ashnod's Harvester, those are not that big, and we've drawn a removal spell even if they do hit another Boulder Branch Golem, so now I am feeling pretty confident here. These all just 1-for-1 trade into anything I have. I feel like an all attack's pretty good considering I have a backup Thraxademon, which is the only somewhat non-expendable creature I have on board. Seems super fair to me. Alright, I probably shouldn't have attacked with the 1/1 there. Now I can Warlord's Elite or Thraxademon plus Paratrooper. I would rather Warlord's Elite here. Ooh, Disciples of Gix. Big fan of the card. Very fun one for sure. They do have more than enough Unearth cards to utilize it to its full effect. Unfortunately for them, a prison sentence is going to be lethal here. It's going to guarantee we get 6 damage in unless they have a disfigure or something. Even if they do have a disfigure, we're still going to hit for 3, which puts them very in reach of an ambush paratrooper finding lethal quickly. Just exile the Harvester, I guess. Overwhelming Remorse. They do have a removal spell here. They are going to go down to 3. Because there's no 1 colorless mana instant speed artifact removal spell in the format. Combat Thresher, a gigantic double striking blocker on the ground, and they will draw a card. And then a Mask of the Jadecrafter for more big stuff on the ground, but they're dead on board to just Unearthing Ashnod's Harvester. I'll Paratrooper anyway, just in case. I'm really bad at math, but yep, they're going to scoop them up. And we are going to be 1-0 to start off this quick draft. Alright, here we are in Game 2 of our Brothers War quick draft. Another pretty solid keep. We don't have anything to do on turn 3 because the Elite is going to require some tapping. But we've got a Paratrooper on 2, Rager on 4, and a great 5-drop to end the curve with Hero of the Dunes. Well, now we know when we get to play Evolving Wilds. That gives us something very nice to do turn 3. Since I can't play a 3-drop anyway, I may as well get my tap land out of the way that turn. Opponent is on mono blue for now. Ooh, and I drew something to actually play this turn, which is very, very nice. Keep curving out a little bit. We're going to grab another plains off this. I got 2 swamps and only 1 plains. Ooh, if I draw a removal spell, I'm going to blow up that tower worker because they did not play a land this turn. We did not draw a removal spell though, so tower worker gets to live another day. I also don't have a combat trick to make the officer big enough to attack into it, so we just play a cohort and pass, I guess. Warlord's Elite's also fine. Can't attack in because that reach. So I'm just gonna go cohort. Tap out for a Scrapwork Rager here, draw a card, lose a life. Their other color must be black, most likely. I would love to just Hero of the Dunes to give everybody +1/+0, but it's not necessary right now. We'll just let my 1/1 soldier attack in. Just Warlord's Elite. Tapping all my mana for it. You know what I do? I've got 5 mana to use Paratrooper here. If they just block the soldier, and if they just block there, that's a fine trade. Because then I can tap out for Elite and then cast Hero of the Dunes next turn. And Hero of the Dunes will bring back the recruitment officer as well as giving these +1/+0. Involuntary cooldown just to slow me down. I'm very happy to see that. Aeronaut Cavalry is a really good draw. I'm actually just going to play that instead. I'm pretty pumped about that. Just really getting a lot of damage in the sky specifically now, so it's even harder to block if they do draw into their second color mana and play some creatures, but really unfortunate draws for our opponent there. Keep the mono-colored opener and just did not hit their second color, so that's going to be 2-0 for us heading into Game 3. Game 3 with our black-white aggro deck. Opponent is going to be on the play. We have a turn 2 Thraxodemon, turn 3 Locust, and turn 5 Aeronaut Cavalry. Opponent is going to start things off with an Evolving Wilds and pass the turn, giving us no information until we pass back to them. Going for the end step Evolving Wilds, what secrets lie in wait? They're going to pull out a Wastes. Plains it is. So we are facing a white deck. The vast majority of powerful white cards in the format are aggressive cards. So I assume probably some kind of aggro mirror match. Certainly if we see a mountain from our opponent, they are on Boros red and white, and they play their own Ashnod's Harvester here. And I think we're probably just going to have to let our Thraxodemon trade with that, as this format tends to play out. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of aggressive mirror matches where whoever is on the play is the one in the aggressive position, and whoever's on the draw kind of just needs to try their best to stay in the game. So that's what we're going to do here. We try to prolong the game, slow down our opponent's aggro start. All right. The Ocean Medic as the follow-up play makes me feel super fine. This is where Carrion Locust is going to be really nice. It makes our trade for Ashnod's Harvester just an exact one-for-one trade, instead of letting our opponent get that Unearth value later. Falaji Vanguard, the signpost red-white uncommon. Every time a creature enters the battlefield under their control, they give something +2/+0, which is very strong with a life linker like Ocean Medic. They're attacking for 3 life, which means they're going to gain 3 life here, and it's going to be pretty impossible to race these 2 cards together, so I could go ahead and just static net Vanguard here, but supplying a 4/4 blocker is also probably big enough to hold our opponent off unless they go for a removal spell this turn, so I'm just going to slam down the 4/4 for now. But static net is a very viable future option. So now if my opponent wants to get in and they're playing a creature this turn, they need to +2/+0 the Vanguard, which would mean that they're not going to get any lifelink. However, if they play 2 creatures in this one turn, that's going to be a 5 power lifelink swing off the Ocean Medic. Alright, they are going to buff the Vanguard and just attack with that one. Fair enough, let's take that 4. Ooh, Military Discipline is a very good draw. So our Locust isn't going to block anything well pretty much ever. So I think I attack in with that, and then I kind of want to static net the Vanguard. I'm a little worried they're going to play a better creature later, but this essentially attacks in as a 4/3 first strike every turn that they play a creature, which is just too much to deal with. Even through a Military Discipline, they'd kill Warlord's Elite, so... I guess I could Cavalry the Elite up to 5/5 stats, because it is a soldier. I'm going to try that here. This could blow up in our face if our opponent plays a removal spell this turn, but they would have to play a removal spell and a creature this turn for it to be really bad for us, because if all they do is cast a removal spell, they can't really attack through the 3/4 either. Scrapwork Mutt, very good card from our opponent, an incredible synergy piece for many different archetypes. Enters the battlefield, lets them discard a card to draw a card, and it has Unearth to do it again. They are red, black, and white, which are the primary Unearth colors. So it's possible they even discard something with Unearth here? No, discard a Sibling Rivalry to draw a card. Now they're going to play an additional Scrapwork Mutt, which is going to buff that Vanguard up to being a 6 power first striker this turn. That is pretty obnoxious, but if I take 6 here, I'm down to 7. That's obviously not a great life total to be at, but if we static net the Vanguard in the future, nothing else they have attacks in really at all. So obviously our life total isn't great. Ooh, I'd rather static net than Prison Sentence, because the important ability on the Falaji Vanguard is a triggered ability, not an activated ability. But I am still very happy to have this Prison Sentence as a backup. That was the biggest concern that I had with static net, was that I'm just going to use it, they're going to play like the 6/4 haste or something, and I'm just going to die to a bigger card that I now can't kill. But I've drawn into a Prison Sentence, so I can have a removal spell backup here, which feels great. So thanks to static net, we're back up to 9 life. If I hold a single 5/5 up here, I block a Mutt and take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if they sack a permanent. Feels like a lot of damage. Got that Military Discipline up, so even Carrion Locust can be a pretty good blocker here, so I'm just going to hit for 3 every turn with Cavalry. Holding up Locust plus Military Discipline as an additional blocker. And there you go, Mishra's Research Desk, phenomenal card. It's Red's Divination. It's going to let them draw 2 cards throughout this game. And more importantly, or not more importantly, but equally importantly, it is sacrificing a permanent, which triggers the Goblin Blast Runner to make that a 3/2 menace. So I have to double block if I want to kill the Blast Runner. Which means I don't get to block elsewhere if I do block there. And the Unearth on these Scrapwork Mutts is going to be very painful, getting a guaranteed additional 2 damage at me at another time. They only have 1 red source, though. They can only reanimate 1 Scrapwork Mutt here unless they draw another mountain. Three blockers is theoretically enough. Because if they Mishra's Research Desk and do a Mutt, I can double block Runner and block a Mutt and just take 1 from Medic. Could Prison Sentence Blast Runner, suppose. I can kill them in 2 attacks if I attack like this and then Prison Sentence Blast Runner. But then I die to Removal Spell and Mountain. What are the odds of that, though? Because they'd have to go Mountain and spend 4 mana on 2 Scrapwork Mutts, and then have 2 mana, a 2 mana removal spell for Butcher. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Put them to 7 life. That puts them to Dead in the Sky, right? Because I just attack with these in the sky and I shoot them with Butcher. Yeah. Go for that 2-turn lethal here. Because I will be hitting them for 6 in the sky plus 2 damage from Butcher, so I'll hit them for 8. So I beat them through Medic's lifelink. Just gotta cross our fingers, hope we don't die here. We could die if they go Mountain and then spend 4 mana on both Mutts, and they have something for 2 mana that can make it so Battlefield Butcher doesn't get to block this turn. They could have Disenchant on my Prison Sentence into... Ooh, Static Net's pretty nasty. This is not one of the lines that can kill us this turn, but this is one of the lines that makes it so they don't die on the Crackback, because they're gaining 2 life off casting this removal spell. So that ruins the whole plan of just kill them in 2 attacks. That being said, a little safe on board now. A little bit safe, and I can still kill them 1 more attack after this, so we get to play really safe and hold 3 blockers up this time. I can easily kill them in 1 attack after this because the Battlefield Butcher gets to trigger twice now. Alright, Aeronaut Cavalry, that's just dead if they tap out for Cavalry. That is dead. One of those gets in and Battlefield Butcher finds the last 2 damage. And that's game. It's going to be 3-0 now as we head into Game 4. Here we are now in Game 4 of our Brothers War Quick Draft. Let's just get into this one. Real aggressive start with Ashnod's Harvester with a Military Discipline to back it up. Make this a 4-1 and win the first combat guaranteed. This could be pretty nasty here. We'll see how it runs. Opponent is on green. Green-white it is with our Gothian Sprite as the first play. I am all in to trade a Military Discipline for the Sprite. And here it is. Drop a Powerstone Engineer. It's just more power, more damage here. Because they're just going to block Harvester for sure next turn. Yep. Oh my god. This figure off the top. Beautiful draw. Guaranteeing we hit for 6 and exile some nonsense from their grave. Past turn, they're down to 14 now, and I still have the mana to cast Ambush Paratrooper. Sarenth Steelseeker, that is a 1-2. That is big enough to trade for Harvester, and Swiftfoot Boots is going to trigger the Steelseeker, see if they hit a land. Or if they don't, they can put it in the bottom, or in the graveyard if they want. They do hit a land. And now we get to cast our Paratrooper. Static Net, that would have been great with 1 more mana. I think we just attack all here and allow Harvester to trade off into Steelseeker at this point. I could attack with, there's just these two, and then they take 3, or they give me a Powerstone. But, I mean, this unearths. Yeah, this thing unearths. Let's just send it in. We're only losing 1 extra power off of it. Then we can just unearth it later still. Like, we're not getting 2 for 1 to Military Discipline, already traded for a card when we cast it. Oh my god, we have some really good draws here, but we do need the lands to cast them. Just get this out of the way, because as soon as I hit another land, I'm not going to be unearthing this for a century. Right, because if I have 4 mana, I'm going to cast this or this in the next 2 turns, and whenever I have 5 mana, I'm going to cast this. I'm not going to have time, I'm not going to have extra 2 mana lying around to unearth that later. Alright, Boots on the Chaplain. Boots with the fur? No, with the flames. Well, it'd be really hard to lose this game. We would have to just miss on land drops for like 5 more turns or something. Never mind, it's actually really easy, barely an inconvenience. Quite easy to lose this game. Titania's Command is the best card in the formats. That being said, our opponent's at 5, so we might just beat a Titania's Command today. Titania's Command, of course, is create 2 4/4s and put 2 +1/+1 counters on all of your other creatures. It's a completely busted card. That was kind of bold if they don't have another flyer. I probably should not have opened my mouth and said that it was going to be really hard to lose this game. I don't know if I finished the thought. I was going to say it's going to be really hard to lose this game unless I miss on like 5 more land draws. And that's currently occurring, so... Not even just that, but that plus my opponent played the strongest card in the whole format. Thank you, Airlift Chaplain. Very cool. We did find planes from the Airlift Chaplain, at least. Boulder Branch Golem. Gains 6 life. Recommission a Locust and play a Thraxodemon. Locust would be 3 power. I can double block Chaplain after that. Could also just Static Net, but then I don't have blockers for the flyer, so I take 4, but I'd gain 2. I'd be at 10, down to 6 after the flyer hits me. I need to stop this flyer. And obviously I can't target it because it has hexproof. hold all the flyers back here in case they have removal. But I guess if they had removal, they'd just kill the locust. I probably should have pinged with paratrooper. Minimum. I guess I could have banked on drawing a land. Because if I hit a land, I could crack back for lethal in the sky. Alright, now I can't static net the golem, but I have a million different double blocks I can use. Oh, I can Hero of the Dunes. Now I can Hero of the Dunes the locust back, and then I still have really, really good flying attacks. I could do chaplain instead. I think I'd rather locust, because it immediately damages my opponent, and it hits just as hard. We have plenty of chump blockers. Alright, things got really sketchy there, but this feels like the chump attack at the end of the road. This is the scoop, pretty much. They're dead in the sky, nothing to stop the flyers. One shoot down is not enough. We have exact lethal on board, and they are going to scoop them up. Almost died to some supreme hubris. Their opponent's deck was busted. I was like, I don't see how we could possibly lose this game. And then immediately Titania's command, well, we're stuck on mana there, almost got us, but we're gonna just skirt on by the skin of our teeth. We are 4-0 now, still undefeated, but just barely as we head into game 5. Here we are now in game 5. This is our most awkward hand so far because we don't actually have any early game plays. We have 3 different 5-mana creatures and a prison sentence. I don't generally like mulliganing away hands that have good mana, but this is really close. I'm just going to keep it and we'll just draw the perfect creatures on curve. Okay, maybe we won't do that, but we have a removal spell and we have our plays lined up at the end of the game at least. Playing against a blue-red, that can be a very threatening archetype if they have third path iconoclast and such. But for now, they're just going to get some card draw off their combat courier. Playing it nice and slow, just setting things up here. Airlift Chaplain, beautiful draw, and now the hand is perfect. Pick up a recruitment officer and make this a 2/2 flyer. Or I guess I could pick up the Battlefield Butcher too. I have plenty more creatures to play. Let's just make the flyer bigger so we can just start slapping in, and I can just recommission one of those instead. Scrapwork Mutt from our opponent, discard a card, draw a card. And that was only 1 mana thanks to their Foundry Inspector. Now Wing Commando is the play. Airlift Chaplain obviously cannot get in past the Wing Commando, unfortunately, but I have a prison sentence to shut that down, and I guess this is not a soldier, so Aeronaut Cavalry can't put a counter on it. Alright, do I just tap out for a Warlord's Elite here and just accept that I'm taking a couple in the sky? That seems fine to me. It's going to let me curve out really well because now next turn I play Hero of the Dunes or Aeronaut Cavalry. And I just keep putting more power on the board. I'm not under an astronomical amount of pressure unless they blow up my Warlord's Elite. Alright, Courier's back. Drawing them another card. And we only take the damage in the sky here, thanks to Warlord's Elite's chunky body. They've got 2 mana up for a potential Scatter Ray. That would obviously not be ideal for me. I actually think it would be worse for me if Aeronaut Cavalry gets countered than if Hero of the Dunes gets countered, so we'll go for the Hero of the Dunes first, then test the waters for the counterspell, which it looks like they do not have. I'm gonna go for the Battlefield Butcher here. Warlord's Elite would trade into those two. I've got plenty of blockers now, so that seems fine. Could get really aggressive and send Chaplain in as well. I'm only taking 2 on the crackback. Yeah, that seems fine. Next turn, once I cast an Aeronaut Cavalry, I have a flyer on board that's too big for the commando to attack into. So I could get a flyer on this board that just completely nullifies the wing commando instead of trading into it like Chaplain would do. Now things are looking really even here. We're pretty close on life totals, pretty close on board states, and exactly even on cards in hand. So it could really go either way. I feel like I have a slight lead because I have a slightly better board, but everything else is pretty equivalent. That is a lot of untapped mana here. I guess we'll figure out what's going on with it. Probably just post-combat some nonsense. Urza's Command. Tapped creature and scry 1, draw 1, so that doesn't really affect combat. That's fine. Definitely a good card, though. They are going to go for the double block to kill the Warlord's Elite. Could recommission it here instead of playing Aeronaut Cavalry, which is somewhat tempting. These are both soldiers. That's pretty nice for the cavalry. Yeah, recommission's very tempting here. I think I'll go for that. I'm gonna go Harvester Recommission, I think. Maximum amount of power on the board. Here's an Energy Refractor from our opponent. That is going to prowess the Wing Commando up to 3/3 status, unearthing a Scrapwork Mutt to discard a card and draw a card. So we're at 12 life. They have 3 damage in this guy, unless they have some really, really good combat trick here. We're probably not getting hit. And we're close to being able to just find lethal on them next turn. On board we have lethal, but they still have 3 mana to play around with and 4 cards in hand. And they are going to Excavation Explosion our flyer. They have 2 total blockers. If they attack with Wing Commando, they have 1 blocker and they're definitely dead. I'm gonna guess my opponent already did the math and just knew that they're dead on board. Because they're very dead. When they block there, take 7, take 2 from Butcher. If I attacked all, that would have worked as well, but using Butcher's a little fancier, a little safer. And we are going to be 5-0 now as we head into Game 6. Here we are in Game 6 with a pretty nice looking hand. We've got that 2-drop Thraxodemon, some cohorts, and of course, our biggest bomb, Hero of the Dunes at 5 mana. Accidentally minimized Arena again. I do play windowed as I'm recording, so I can make sure everything's going fine on the recording front, and sometimes I accidentally click outside of Arena and then have to open it back up and things go real slow. That is a very aggressive go for the throat. Just immediately blow up the Thraxodemon. And with enough aggressive creatures in hand, it could make sense here. They do immediately drop down a Killzone Acrobat, and they're on black-red, one of the most aggressive archetypes. No attacks with the Killzone Acrobat, alright. I am a-okay with that. Rager is big enough to trade into Acrobat, so I'll go for that here. Cohort would also be super solid. Sibling Rivalry. borrow the Rager and sack it. Not the greatest value I've ever seen off of the Killzone Acrobat Sibling Rivalry combo, because we can just unearth that card and get good value. So I'm feeling pretty confident this game. Unless their hand is like a full play set of Sibling Rivalries, and even then, I think we're in a great spot. Yep, pass through the turn. I just don't think the Sibling Rivalry sack plan works super well against our deck. It's just a good matchup for us in general. I can 3 mana for Elite and Paratrooper as well. We can plan to sack the Elite. I don't think I really want to do that. I think I just want to keep playing expendable nonsense. Like an additional cohort. Just really make their sacrifice effects and removal spells in hand feel pretty bad here. Dragon Engine. Well, that's a good draw. That's going to make that really simple. I was going to just keep playing flyers and being ready to chump it every turn, but if we top deck Prison Sentence, that's an option as well. Alright, a trade for the Acrobat is going to occur here, which we're actually pretty happy with. Generally, like, Recruitment Officer does have a very good effect, but we have so many more things to do with our mana, we're never going to get to the point where we can dump the mana into that. Alright, Emergency Weld, definitely good for our opponent. Recast that Acrobat. They have a very expendable Dragon Engine that they can sacrifice to the Acrobat on an attack later, but we're at 16, they're at 9, so they probably just have to play the defense here. Hero of the Dunes might just be straight lethal at this point. 2 blockers, they go block, block, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not lethal, but it is more than close enough, so I'm just going to do it. Take the Recruitment Officer over the Thraxodemon, because I'm not going to sacrifice anything on my board. So, I mean, it's 1 less toughness, but its ability is more relevant right now by a tiny, tiny bit. Alright, they have to just go for those 2 blocks to survive. Now they are down to 3. And they're going to scoop them up. It is 6-0 for the white-black Unearth aggro deck. Excellent stuff as we head into Game 7, what may be the final boss. Here we are in round 7 of our quick draft, and this is probably a mulligan here. No black source is incredibly painful, and being stuck on 2 mana right now is risky. This hand is worse. And it's actually marginally better because the good cards are colorless. There's less black cards in the hand, and we have a guaranteed play on 2 as well as great 4-drops, but it's definitely not good. Mulligan to bad hand into a just 0.1% better hand really here. Really don't want to do the mulligan to 5 here. That is usually devastatingly painful, and at least we're on the draw. But this may be the game where Arena has decided we are not undefeated. Really starting to look that way. Alright. That is very okay with me. Tap out for an Excavation Explosion on our Unearth card, especially since I have Recommission in hand. Alright, that was an excellent draw here. We're on our way to that 4 mana. They will trigger Steel Seeker when that Power Stone comes in. Would I rather kill Opportunist? No, I think I just want to kill Steel Seeker with this Disfigure. Opponent is doing really, really well mana-wise. They're hitting all their land drops, plus Sentinel Stalwart is giving them mana off these Power Stones, so they can play some very big stuff really quickly. Well, Harvester's not going to attack in super well against all this. I mean, Military Discipline is going to make an attack or a block reasonable later, but for now it's probably better to use all 4 of our mana instead of just 1 of it. Get a Cohort down, which trades really well on this board. Prison Sentence, another good card, but we're just going to keep playing Cohorts. I don't want to attack with Cohort here, because then it likely gets exiled off a Harvester attack next turn, but then I guess they just kill a 1/1. Skyfisher Spider, another card pretty bad on this board state, thanks to us having all of our Unearth cards. And just kill the Harvester, sure. That is A-okay. Exile it in grave. This looks like really good value for our opponent, but it's an exactly even trade, where they spent the front half and back half of their Harvester to get rid of the front half and back half of our Harvester. Warlord's Elite's a pretty sick draw here, because I can cast that off of these soldiers and still hold up Military Discipline, and it's the biggest card on board by a long shot. And now all the Cohort trades on board are great because our opponent does not have an Ashnod's Harvester anymore. Alright. While I have this mana, I feel like it's probably solid to Military Discipline, but these trades are just good. Next turn I can unearth a Cohort and Military Discipline Warlord's Elite. Something more important to keep around. Mishra, that's fine. It's basically a 4/4 with no other text, so I'm just not going to target their permanents. A-okay. Might have to actually just spend a Military Discipline to kill the Mishra here, awkwardly enough. Because of course if I Military Discipline the Cohort, the Military Discipline will die in the future, but it's worth it. It's a 1-for-1 trade Discipline into Mishra. Play Revenant is very okay with me. Powerstone Fracture blow up our Warlord's Fleet, sure. Still got a Paratrooper. Start getting in with, we'll just have to Prison Sentence the Skyfisher Spider eventually. Not yet. Let's keep doing Cohort things because it attacks into that 3 toughness quite well. Alright. So now we're going to 2-draw out our planes. Next turn we're going to drop a Paratrooper and Prison Sentence the Spider. Now, I guess Clay Revenant makes it so the 1/1 soldiers don't really get in until I have the mana up to buff Paratrooper, but still. I'll have that soon enough. Then we get to Scry to set up our draws. Hero of the Dunes being an incredible one. Good lord, that's going to be a good draw. Make all of these 2/1s. And buff the Flyer. Opponent hits a Chromatic Star to go ahead and draw a card here. Mishra's Bauble to draw a card here. They know that we have a Hero of the Dunes on top now. So they know that they're incredibly dead. That's what they know. We get a Warlord's Elite back from grave as well. This is going to be just sick nasty. Send in everybody and hit for 8. They are down to 5. And there you go, just incredible stuff from that deck there. Really good draws after the mulligan. just gonna take it, just gonna really turn things around. A lot of that, just a ton of work done by the Unearth cards, like the scrapwork cohorts being just MVPs in the deck. We're gonna be a full 7-0 run today. Another look at the deck list real quick before I sign off for the night, but beautiful black-white aggro Unearth stuff again. Talked big game on the scrapwork cohort, and it delivered today. Huge stuff from that. Ashnod's Harvester was great as well. Recruitment Officer being a lot of power for so cheap, and Warlord's Elite also being a pretty premium card in the deck because of its synergies with the Recommission and with Hero of the Dunes. And of course, talked an incredibly big game on Hero of the Dunes, taking it over that solid rare of Ashnod, and that's another card that greatly delivered. So just sweet stuff from the black-white aggro deck today. Everything we wanted to work out just did well for us. Just some good luck today. Some great cards picked up during the draft. Great draws during the gameplay. Pretty simple stuff here. Just kind of a basic little example of a powerful black-white Unearth aggro deck in the Brothers War format. But that is going to end today's video. As always, if you want to see some more videos like this, you can like, comment, and subscribe to let the YouTube algorithm know to send you some more of these videos in your recommended feeds. We've got some great stuff on the horizon. The Arena Cube is coming back December 13th, and I'll be drafting a ton of that. There's also going to be an Arena Cube Arena Open in the middle of December that I will be playing with. Cube I usually play pretty casually, just like for fun mostly, so I don't know if I'm going to try really hard to day 2 that event, but I'll definitely play day 1 at the very least. There's also going to be Brothers War qualifier play-in events that are going to be more Brothers War sealed events, so we'll be playing in 1 or 2 of those throughout the month, and yeah, plenty of cool stuff on the horizon. If you're interested in that, stay tuned. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.